Well, hello, Emmanuel Faith. I want to thank you again for being with us this past weekend. Also want to say again my own personal gratitude and thanks for all of our servicemen and women as we remembered them as well this Memorial Day. As we get into our small groups this week, I wanted to take just a few minutes with you and talk with you a little bit more about one of the points that I brought out in the message, and didn't really have the time, as always, to fully develop what was going on and what Paul was getting at. What I'm thinking about here is point number 3, where we talked about what are our goals as faithful spiritual leaders. And you remember we discovered together that God wants us to use the influence that He has given us to strengthen the faith of other Christians and to help them to live like Jesus. Well, what I want to do is talk with you for just a second about this very familiar phrase of living like Jesus. Because in the NASB, you'll see that the word that I took and put into the phrase living like Jesus is the word godliness. And this word godliness is a very important word. Shows up a number of times in the pastoral epistles of Titus and 1st and 2nd Timothy. It's so important, in fact, that one commentator, Howard Marshall, wrote a 10-page excursus on just this word at the end of his commentary on Titus 1 through 4. What I simply want to do is share with you some of what I learned as I studied him. This word godliness functions to describe the life or the manner of life which makes up true Christianity, which is to say that there is a form of living out there where people are saying they're living the true Christian life, but they're really not. Number 2, it proceeds out of a commitment to God and the orthodox teaching of the faith. Now, as we learned last weekend, it would be best if that commitment were a wholehearted commitment. And for tips on how to keep your heart pure and right before God, I would simply refer you to last week's video blog. Number 3, to some extent, it involves both the teaching and the knowledge of what godliness involves. So we have to be exposed to it in the teaching, but then we have to go out and do it so that we really understand. It's like learning to drive a car, right? You can study about what it is like to drive a car. You can drive in the car with your parents, but until you actually get behind the wheel, now you have a different kind of an understanding of what it is. So we need to learn about it, but then we need to go out and do it. Next, as you can imagine, it's concerned with the whole of Christian behavior. And so it encompasses everything that God has for us, everything that He has in mind as He lays out for us how He wants us to live our lives, which means it's a thoroughly dynamic description of life. It's one that we have to pursue actively. That's 1 Timothy 4:7. And we have to consciously also decide to go after it. We'll get to that when we get to Titus chapter 2 in our study. It combines both inner and outer dimensions. That goes back to the idea of the heart. So it's who we are and it's what we do. And it implies a serious approach to life and our relationship with God. And then it reminds us to stay away from activities which are divorced from upright living. So there's a lot there. Now, if your small group is anything like Derica's and mine, then I know you love to laugh, and I know you love to tell stories, and I know you love to talk about the craziness of life. And that's all good. We need that. But this text reminds us that when we get together, there's a serious side to our gathering as well. We each have leadership and influence in one another's lives. And God very much expects us to use that influence to spur one another on to love and good deeds. And that requires 2 things. First, I have to be confident. We talked about this. I have to be confident enough and bold enough to do and say some things that would be spurring to you, right? But then secondly, I have to be humble enough to allow God to use you in my life to do those same kinds of things. It can't just be me influencing and spurring you. I got to allow you to do the same thing to me. Remember, the best followers make the best leaders. So if you want to be an influencer, be sure that you're willing to be influenced toward this key area of godliness. Well, I pray that you enjoy your time together as a group this week, that you do the funny stories and the craziness of life, but then that you also take time to get serious about how are we moving forward in living like Jesus? How are we moving forward in being a glory to Christ? Have a great time. Next week, Pastor Dennis is back. We'll look forward to that. God bless you.